our assignment, we've been tasked with figuring out which one of two separate text material we should use to have best practices when it comes to market research. What might be required to best do an audience profile, if you will. The texts get into a condition of using an audience profile sheet. The things that we must consider is our audience size, no matter what that be it 1 to 1,000. What are the demographics of our audience? Be they, a room full of children, be they a mixed variety, you're at a old folks home, the entire gambit is up for grabs. How are we going to relay our message? What technique are we going to use? How do we plan on getting our message out? And ultimately, what is our final objective? So the two pieces of material that we have been allowed to choose from are both discussing analyzing our audience. The first text is from Mike Markel. It's called Technical Communications. The second is a text by Jordan Smith, Communications at Work. So both pieces of material are very date relevant. As you can see, they're within the past 3 years. We need to figure out which one is going to be most efficient for our purposes, which one will serve our independent needs, which one's going to be as an aid to, as a training tool for us doing audience analysis, which one's going to be best from a usage either as a current or professional development mechanism. Now, I want you to note down at the very bottom of the screen, it talks about the size of the documents that we have. Markel's chapter 5, Analyzing Your Audience and Purpose, is 29 pages in length, whereas Smith's document, Analyzing Your Audience, is only 10 pages in length. Now, one might think, oh, well, he didn't really cover the material, which is absolutely not the case. He just condensed the material quite a bit more effectively. And with that, we all know that effective communication is a very useful tool. It helps our audience to hear us. Now, with this, I personally believe that Communications at Work fills this need best. Communications at Work, as I stated, is condensed material. It's, again, the 10 pages long. Students or professionals can gain immediate results from the material. As a student, the specific topics are most relevant. And as a professional, samples are relevant also, but they're also relatable to real world sampling. Outside sources are used as support as opposed to everything being written out. He allows us to basically go out and do a bit of research on our own, if you will, by the use of either websites that we're directed to or potentially hyperlinks to either point us to other locations within the text or point us to specific web pages that are out there. So what's in the material? What are they discussing? Communications at Works prefer the tact of profiling techniques to learn to adjust your writing style to these needs. Know thy customer is his golden rule. It's the key to success as a presenter, Smith states. Easy to follow material and examples. The size of the audience he discusses, whether it's a single email, you're leading a group, presenting to an entire class like we're doing right now, or you're doing a speech to a room full of spectators, considering your peripheral audience. Who else might view this presentation? Got to take all of that into consideration. You need to use familiar language and illustrations. Relationship to the audience and their position is important to consider, whether they be a dock worker, CEOs, instructors, or someone as simple as our children. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but you understand what I'm saying. Your word choices. along with formality spectrum is an important key to successful communication. The use of informal words, use of semi-formal, formal jargon, all comes into play when you are knowing your customer. Their education level, demographics, who specifically are we addressing? Now, this is where Smith sort of wraps everything up. He points out that these are the key factors that will allow us to best write and communicate efficiently with our audience. Now, Markel gets into much greater detail, as you can see by this entire list of material that's being presented. His topics for chapter 5 is analyzing your audience and purpose. Who is your spectator, along with what do they know, and what do you want to accomplish? He gets into an audience profile sheet, which goes over in great detail using the who, what, when, where, and why in an audience demographic analysis. What are the characteristics of your audience? Who's the reader? What are they reading? What do they expect to obtain? How will it be used? So the detail that is being derived from this text is quite onerous. Learning about your listener. What do they already know? How might you conduct an interview of your audience? You need to research your audience, either online or some other format. Do they have a social media website that you can go and find other documents that they've either written or might have read? Analyzing their entire social media database. Next, Markel gets into something that Smith does not, which is cross-cultural communications. He really expands on this one because this is a method of isolating your audience so quickly that you can lose an entire cohort of listeners by doing something as simple as them perceiving you as talking down to them. Variables such as political, economical, social, religious, educational, technical, linguistics, variables that are beneath the surface. You got to consider all of these variables as you write. Use of graphics and design for multicultural readers is quite different than those either within your specifically chosen country, or when it comes to graphics, you can use graphics that you basically are speaking over your audience by presenting them as something that they simply don't understand. It's very important when you're writing to multiple audiences to meet the collective needs of the audience. Don't communicate, you may not communicate information properly if you don't. You have to take the audience size. You may want to consider even using modular reporting techniques. Determine the purpose of why you're writing. What do you want to accomplish to convince or communicate to your reader? Real versus expressed purposes. He really hones in on sticking to the facts. Don't elaborate on things. Then he gets into a little bit really deeper minutia. But again, it's important stuff. You want to reach out to your manager, to management. Make sure you're on track. Make sure you're on point. Have you missed anything? Is there a preferred format that your boss might prefer or choose for you to use? Maybe he wants you to put it together as a PDF where you were going to just send out an email. So you have to take all of these things into account. What about a new audience? What about an audience that's going to use this later on down the line? These are all the things that Markel states that you have to take into consideration within these 29 pages of documents that you're going to read. And it is all very, very, very valid reading, but it is quite lengthy and a little bit complicated for us to, I think, try and want to use from a standpoint of how we're going to do market research, either for a job, for our boss, for our business, or for our class. So with that, I think Smith's Communication at Work truly satisfies our needs. There are similarities that we've already discussed between the writings. They both talk about how you need to go about considering your audience, your relationship to the presentation. Will there possibly be external viewers, using effective words and diction? Why are you making the presentation? And then we get into those variances. What are the differences? The length of the document I've talked exponentially about. Extended explanations, precise explanations, concise versus expanded examples, varied topics of discussion, the use of supporting materials, how they're going about really supporting their work based on doing your own tad bit of research or me telling you what this is like. So with that, I think that is probably how it would be best to go about meeting our market research needs. So with that, I want to add one final thought. Please, please proofread your final message. Show respect for your audience's time. Check the spelling and grammar. Is your message clear? Are you getting across what you wanted to get across? Is your message relatable? Are you being honest and truthful? If you have done all of these things, your audience is going to appreciate your time because they feel like they've been respected. This is David Yarbrough, and I'd like to thank you for reading and listening.